Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network. KingofPodcasts.com.
So you want to film a TV show or a movie? I guess anywhere but Hollywood.
The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the program. This is King of Podcasts here with you with another episode. And not only will you have this episode this week of the Broadcasters Podcast, you're also going to get a special interview that I said I was going to go ahead and put out some interviews that I had conducted recently. And one of those is going to go out this weekend after this episode. And that is my interview with Carell, the legendary radio veteran, music veteran, a multifaceted broadcasting veteran that I got a chance to go and speak with and spent more than 50 minutes talking to him. And let's just say that you could tell he was in radio before because, you know, it's very, you got to jump right in if you want to go and ask questions of him because he has a lot to say. Very energetic, very interesting. Obviously, I can tell why he had such a great career, even though, you know, it was on the other side of the country where in Los Angeles and San Francisco, I didn't get a chance to personally hear him, but I knew of his career and I knew especially the people that are around him and who was able to go ahead and talk to me about and share his story. So really great story to go and hear coming up. You'll see that you're going to actually catch that episode right here at kingofpodcasts.com. It will also drop on my YouTube channel. You'll find it Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock Pacific time. So look for that episode. That'll drop on this feed right here where you're catching this episode. You'll catch it later on this weekend. So an extra bonus for you here from the Broadcasters Podcast. But anyway, we're going to focus ourselves still on the West Coast of the United States in Hollywood because there have been a lot of stories that have come out about the issues in Hollywood and where things are kind of going flat. Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Vulture, among other places, they're all giving stories right now that are unsettling, that we've already seen for a while, that there's not a lot of production being done anymore in Hollywood. In the days we have right now with streaming and more movie studios, more TV studios, more sets, shoots are being done anywhere else but Hollywood. So let's look into it. There's a lot to get into about that. Now, I don't want to do anything when it comes to trying to put this into a political issue, but it is partly a political issue because of the governor there in California that has not made things easy for the Hollywood folks to be able to go ahead and produce content where they are. That's really what it was been down to. So first of all, we go into the special report that came in from Variety about the film and TV production crisis has become the dominant entertainment industry story of 2025. Now, in the Vulture article, they talked to famous actor Rob Lowe, who's been in numerous film and TV projects. For a number of network TV shows that he worked on, including 911 Lone Star, which wrapped production on its final season last year. The shows he also worked on, which were The West Wing, Brothers and Sisters, Parks and Recreation, Code Black, were all shot in the same place TV shows and movies have always been shot, where there's rarely a shortage of veteran Dolly grips, Los Angeles. But he says of filming in Los Angeles now that filming locally has been more difficult and often flat out impossible. The state of the business is so bleak now, he says, that I'm even willing to consider shooting outside of LA because the opportunities here have just gone away, end quote. So among the reasons that LA has had so many issues are its signature business has dealt with the fires, the forest fires that have come through rampantly through Los Angeles and through Orange County itself over the years. COVID, the decline of movie theaters and linear TV that caused that as a result of COVID, and streaming's boom and bust. So all this has created an identity crisis. And if you call up a couple dozen executives, agents, directors, producers, writers, actors, and below-the-line artists, ask about the scene on the ground right now, they'll say it's a city detached from its old rhythms and sense of purpose. So with some of the people they spoke with here from Vulture, said it's so grim, it's like a sad company town where the mill is closing. It's morose and everybody's scared, and it's a bummer to live here now. There are executives and agents that are still back in the offices, so like the agencies and the production studios, they still got people working around them, but not much of that how happens over Zoom. But production has largely left town. So it's become an exodus. Only about a fifth of American movies and TV shows are filmed in Los Angeles. According to Film LA, 2024 was the worst year on record for local filming, aside from 2020. So it was 2023 we had all the strikes. So at least 6 months had even more activity than we had now. So correction. None of the 10 highest grossing live action movies last year were shot in LA. And none of the Best Picture nominees for this year. One of the creators of the Power Universe, Courtney A. Kemp, makes the point that, quote, these backlots are ghost towns right now, end quote. Even movies that are set in LA are actually being filmed elsewhere. So the movie The Substance was actually shot in Paris, Antibes, and around Cannes and Nice in France. Netflix's Carry On movie was actually made in New Orleans. These are scenic places in their own right, of course, but none of this is quite up to the role. And making other cities look like LA is just not really possible. We're too identifiable. We're an international city. This is according to production supervisor and location manager Caleb Duffy, that he says LA is an international city with too many iconic places to recreate everywhere else. The streets are different. The trees and foliage are different. But there's also a movie from Russell Crowe where he's going to be filming a thriller set in Los Angeles called Bear Country. They're going to shoot it in Queensland, Australia. So in the story here, they say that Hollywood has been dislodged from its physical home. The new hubs that are being built now may suit the needs of individual projects, but none of them offer what LA did for most of the past century, a stable gravitational center where crews can make a living and the craft can be passed down. It's a logistical reorganization. It's an existential shift, and there may be no going back. I think of the fact that one of the folks I talked to here was a director that was doing movies over here in Los Angeles and actually did the movie Hollywood No. I was thinking of the fact that this is the case now where they have things where, the access to some of the actors you could have. That if you wanted to get certain actors to come on board and work on scale on something, it's like the accessibility of the people that you need, of the people behind the scenes and people on camera. Whatever talent that you needed, you can get easy access to those people. But they're all spread out now. They talked to Jonathan Nolan, who is the writer-director, who's worked on Person of Interest, Westworld, and Fallout, says, quote, I don't think Hollywood, the industry, has much to do with Hollywood, the place, anymore. Wow. Actually, Rob Lowe said that. Kind of confusing when they said this here. Oh, Jonathan Nolan says the nucleus that Hollywood grew out of is dying. So what are the areas now that are being picked up as the new hubs for films? Well, starting in the 1990s, British Columbia hatched a plan to bring some of that action north. The Canadian provincial government introduced one of the first film tax credits. So luring foreign productions, a modest rebate on money spent employing local crews, and U.S. states started taking notice. And in the new millennium, Louisiana and New Mexico rolled out flashy credits of their own, transforming New Orleans and Albuquerque into viable production hubs. And then streaming boomed, and the demand for scripted entertainment exploded. With more in play, regions around the world began ramping up their incentives, and many built south stages and crew bases to compete with those in LA. So Canada, UK, Australia, aggressively offering tax credits, making even more appealing by favorable exchange rates. And then you have states like Georgia and New York following. And by that point, then most of the country and dozens of countries beyond are offering some production subsidy of some version. So here's the benefit of it. Producers can now shoot in certain locations and receive back 30 to 40% of a project's budget with local taxpayers footing the bill. Unlike traditional tax breaks, which merely reduce what a company owes, these credits are often amount to direct cash payments, issued regardless of whether the production generates significant tax revenue in return. So with New York State, they offer a 30% base tax credit with a 10% bonus for projects made upstate, not in the city. At the same time, California has sat on its hands, assuming its long-standing monopoly on talent and infrastructure will be enough to keep Hollywood anchored. Subsidizing an industry is already based there. That was a tougher sell, but now they did introduce their own incentive program in 2009. It has been sweetened since, and the credit may sound generous, but it's miserly to the point of uselessness. California refunds only 20% of the first $100 million the project spends, and excludes the salaries and directories of actors, which are often the biggest line items. And also the program has a cap of $330 million, meaning many productions are turned away and end up filming elsewhere, including Georgia. The credit is uncapped and virtually guaranteed to any project that desires to shoot there. California enforces some of the world's strongest union protections, which also translate to higher labor costs that can push producers toward locations with weaker ones. And because of streaming and the amount of content budgets being slashed, tax credits became now more essential because companies still spending were determined to spend less. So when you have Netflix, Amazon, and Apple jumping into production, those studios want to make things as cost efficient as possible. Now cost efficiency is the primary focus of a lot of TV and film production in a way that it didn't used to be. And oftentimes that means shooting in Atlanta or Vancouver or Toronto or Croatia or Moldova or whatever. Yeah. Look, if you watch any of the programs that Dick Wolf produces, that's 9 shows. Remember, all the Chicago shows, Fire, Med, PD, FBI, was Most Wanted, but now you got International, and FBI itself, Law and Order, SVU, and Law and Order Organized Crime, all those shows. They're all being done on the cheap. You can tell. I'm sure there's a lot of other shows that don't have a big budget at all. Like, I said this, I'm sure, not that long ago, but when I look at the production of other TV shows, right now, I've been watching Kojak. I'm right now in the middle of the 3rd season of Kojak watching on Prime Video. And I can just tell, like, even the production value and the budget they had for those shows, even though they did some cost-efficient things where some of the same exterior shots are always reused, but still, you have stunts. You have cars being set on fire, exploded, or being tipped over. Chase scenes, all those kind of things. Actual on-location shooting, and not something where everything's done in a studio. You can see a lot of it going on. Like, everything is actually moving along pretty well. And you can tell they put real money to it. And that's also because they were also even doing shows that the time of the program each hour, minus commercials, they were shooting more for 50 minutes of programming than instead of 42 to 43 minutes now. Like, there's a lot more commercials they're going to get in, but I feel like the commercials are getting a little more money being spent than the television shows themselves. That's not good. Now, Rob Lowe continues along and says that whenever a studio greenlights a project, it runs the numbers and finds that usually the cost of filming in Los Angeles is too steep now. Quote, if you're a publicly traded company, you want to turn a profit, it's your fiduciary responsibility to go shoot somewhere else. With these economics, you get fired otherwise. Now, with blockbuster movies, if the budgets are over $300 million, California's tax credits can easily make filming in LA tens of millions of dollars more expensive than other locations. Nolan actually said here that I know producers who won't even make a paper budget for LA because they won't even try to figure out how much it would cost here because they know it's too much. So there was the movie Night Swim. It was one of the first movies to come out in January 2024. The movie was shot in LA. The budget, it was an A24 movie. The budget was $15 million. Or was it Blumhouse? I forget. Oh, yeah, it was Blumhouse, excuse me. $15 million budget. It grossed $32.5 million in North American theaters, domestic. The shooting in LA cost an extra $4.5 million. In retrospect, it was probably the wrong decision because they really could have made back more money. Think about it. $10 to $11 million on the budget with a better profit. Yeah, probably makes sense. And it's slightly more feasible to make TV shows and movies in LA because the costs can be amortized over episodes and seasons, but only for creators with enough clout to demand it, and only if the sacrifices are made. So there's the show Fallout that Amazon produces right now. It's being shot in Santa Clarita in LA. It's been helped by a bonus 5% tax credit that benefits shows relocating to California from somewhere else. Because the first season of Fallout was at Brooklyn Navy Yard, New York. So Nolan, to be able to go and shoot in LA, they cut 18 days from this season's production schedule. But you have to cut corners to do this. There's a Ted Danson show that's on Netflix called Man on the Inside. And In this particular show, they shot in LA because 85% of it was made on the same no-frills soundstage set up so episodes could be shot quickly. And a lot of the actors are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, so they didn't want to go ahead and take them to other markets to go and do the show. But all in one place, keep it as tight as you can. That's what the plan was. Production is now fickle, mobile, and loyal only to the biggest offer. Louisiana did have a real prominence for movie making, nicknamed the Hollywood South, because they brought shows like True Detective and movies like Jurassic World in the 2010s to their market. But then Georgia started offering richer deals, so did other states. Most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe relocated from Georgia to London to take advantage of the UK's lucrative credits. And Saudi Arabia is also going to be ready to get into the game of movie making by offering really lucrative tax credits as well. But then the other part too is that for people that live in Los Angeles that are working in front of the camera or behind the camera, it's harder because they have to go ahead and take the shoot somewhere else. So the makers of scripted TV series can require open-ended commitments to live in faraway locations for months at a time, year after year, as long as the show is on the air. There's crew members who can't command marquee salaries, but once managed to build lives in LA simply because that's where the work was. But now no centralized hub, fewer jobs in LA. Now they have to go ahead and take themselves to other places around the world to continue to work. So now they're going to get to stay full time in LA to go ahead and do work. So one crew member talked about moving from Atlanta to Los Angeles in 2015 to break into post-production, but couldn't get a foot in the door. And then he moved back to Atlanta, which became a production hotspot. Immediately found himself in demand as a second camera assistant. Between 2017 and 2022, he worked steadily on major TV shows and blockbuster films. He says he can go to a bar in Atlanta, and there will be 3 different crews from 3 different TV shows there. And once, without even trying, I came home with a job. But then there were the strikes, the streaming contraction. Stranger Things had filmed 5 seasons in Atlanta, wrapped its final one in 2024. Marvel left the state, and local crew members were starting to look for jobs, and Californians and New Yorkers started moving to Atlanta during the boom. And now things have changed in Georgia. So now California is trying to go in and intervene. So the story is that Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed lifting the annual cap on the state's tax credit, but more than doubling it from $330 million to $750 million. That would help for some, especially with the production infrastructure that still counts for something. Now, Rob Lowe says that California doesn't need to have the most aggressive incentive to bring business back, but it'll just need to be better than it is. So they wouldn't get any extra discounts, but the discounts they could get, the tax credits that we got on 20%, there would be more productions that could be able to go ahead and take advantage of that. That's it. I don't know if that's going to be much of a help at all. They're not giving more tax credits, not trying to go and bring people to come back. And then you also have to think about the stars that have also decided to go and start shooting somewhere else, decided to go entrepreneurial and move to other places. So put it like this. Mark Wahlberg has a new studio complex in Nevada. Kevin Costner has one in Utah. Zachary Levi of Shazam fame, he's raising money for his own $100 million studio near Austin. Then you got Matthew McConaughey, Woody Harrelson, and Dennis Quaid also starting an ad for the True to Texas campaign, asking lawmakers to expand the state's film incentives. The current presidential administrations also come in, trying to make change to make sure that movies are and productions are actually being kept in America. So President Trump declaring a national security threat, announcing a tariff of 100% on all movies produced in foreign lands. The idea was initially planted by John Voight, the Midnight Cowboy star, Ray Donovan, plenty of other movies. And he was also one of 3 appointed special ambassadors to Hollywood, along with Mel Gibson and Sylvester Stallone. So the tariff would cancel out any internationally provided tax incentive for movies that could have been produced in the U.S. but were not. Voight's proposal recommended a federal film tax credit of 10% that can be added to any state incentive, plus a 5 to 10% bonus for shooting in economically depressed areas, which would include California. But Hollywood unions and the major studios did sign a letter endorsing the federal incentive, but omitting any mention of a tariff. And the guilds represent talent across 50 states, that their priority is keeping jobs within the U.S. more broadly. But after the fires of last year, or earlier this year, last year rather, right? That really did put a damper on Los Angeles because there were a lot of people that might have been living in that area that were working in Hollywood that probably have moved away or gone somewhere else or trying to go and rebuild. So, I mean, a lot of things happening to Los Angeles and to Hollywood, that's just completely changed everything. But we kind of figured this was going to happen anyway. There's a lot of issues that are going on in Hollywood that are not making things easy at all. Now, another story that Vulture came out that was very interesting is the issue of the new media circuit. And for famous people trying to promote whatever projects they have is starting to become a real struggle because stars and their teams, they don't know what works to go ahead and get their projects off the ground, to get people to watch what's going on. So they take an example of Andrew Garfield, who was promoting the movie We Live in Time. And so Garfield, when they were sending him out to go ahead and promote the movie, they had tasteful magazine spreads, gauzy interviews with traditional press, the standard junkets. And then the other half that they did to try to get the movie across was on the internet. So he cashed in a long-running, playfully ambiguous flirtation with chicken shop date Amelia de Moldenberg, narrated an essay about loss for the New York Times Modern Love podcast, processed emotions with Dax Shepard on Armchair Expert, helped even Elmo explain grief on Sesame Street, answered questions buried under puppies for a BuzzFeed video, raided the Criterion Closet, and when a bizarre-looking carousel horse went viral, he rolled with the punches and says, "Man, I love the horse meme," telling the Associated Press. But notice all these different programs and things that are doing online, that it's all still famous people that are doing this. Not so many content creators, but people that have already been famous, for the most part. But there were certain areas that that Garfield did not have his publicity go to. Didn't go on the Smartless podcast with Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. Home wasn't toured by Architectural Digest. Lies weren't detected by Vanity Fair. And other places that become staples of the modern media circuit. Hot Ones, Call Her Daddy, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, Mythical Kitchen's Last Meals. And in some cases, they might not match the tone of the campaign. But it's a matter of how much time is there to go ahead and promote. So publicity options are aplenty now that people are starting to consider the new media. But now PR teams are getting anxious because they're tasked with positioning clients for maximum exposure among an increasingly fragmented audience. As nearly a dozen publicity veterans have told Vulture that the press rounds mutated into something unruly. 15 years ago, building national name recognition was straight shot. Newspaper feature, magazine cover, morning show, late night hit, the trades, some local spots. This new media circuit today resembles a maddening sprawl. Countless possible routes, none guaranteed. One partner top firm says it's overwhelming. So landing a spot on today's top podcasts on YouTube or YouTube shows is as competitive as booking late night TV shows during its peak, which is what the point is. If you want to promote something, you're not going on Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, or Stephen Colbert. You're not. You're just not. I think Saturday Night Live still holds true for promotion when it comes to everything because they did pretty good this year. You had 8 million viewers that are watching on Saturday nights. They've gotten themselves viral again. So I think they're getting somewhere with what they're doing with their skits. I think that is still helping out for music and for movies and for TV hosts or TV stars to get themselves noticed on projects. That is working still. I believe that. There've always been friendly outlets, but bookings don't always work out. Messages don't always stick. But now unpredictability is the norm. Unlike the old days, there's no guaranteed baseline of attention. Most of the time, the video just dies in darkness because nothing really lands. Now, one of the best models that really worked for the new media circuit, Timothy Chalamet. So leading up to A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic, this guy, it was completely unpredictable. So he had what was called the ubiquitous yet surprising broing out with Theo Von, clowning around with Brittany Brusky, riding a Lime scooter onto a red carpet. He was on a panel of football experts to go ahead and call Ohio State's win over Miami on College Game Day. He was good on that show. He was there on Theo Von. He was there on College Game Day. He definitely got guys to pay attention because before that, Timothy Chalamet just gave me a different kind of rub. Like I watched him in Dune. I watched him in Wonka. I was like, okay. But I see him there. And actually, if you see that during the NBA's Eastern Conference Finals, him and Kylie Jenner spotted at all the Knicks games. Another point where like sports is big to him. Plus, I keep seeing interviews where I saw him on 60 Minutes, and he's talking about is working in theater and being in New York and trying to work his way up into where he is today. Like it was just grounded, which is really great. But his natural extensions of who he is, we got to learn about him being more realistic, like he was grounded. A multi-talented art kid savant who just can't quite be pinned down. Because even on sports, at College Game Day, he knew his shit. He knew his sports, he knew his music, he knew his video games, he knew all that stuff. So one film studio executive says that I thought Timothy looked like the most humble person in the world when he showed up in his own lookalike contest, which is pretty funny. But sustaining that sort of authenticity can be a tricky task when you're doing a 3-hour podcast. Some clients really thrive in that environment, but I know plenty who feel anxious about that conversation. Where's it going to go? Are they going to bring up something I don't want to talk about? So the appeal of Chappell Roan is another example they use. It's very vivid, unfiltered energy. But that same disposition drew hand-wringing from mom influencers after she called her motherhood hell on Call Her Daddy. That's why knowing what you're dealing with is vital. No star should be able to sit down at the tape Club Shay Shay, think the show will edit anything out. No. When you're on podcasting, that's the difference. We saw it in the presidential election season. When you're on these longer end podcasts, and this just open forum, it's not my cup of tea. You're just open to a lot of clips, but I mean, you have to just realize in that kind of time, it's because you're not getting approached with the gotcha questions necessarily. It's just the questions and answers are just more casual. And that camaraderie that you're having with the host, whether it's Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn or whoever it is, you're realizing that they're getting you into a comfortable mood. And there might be some conversations you have that get a little bit uninhibited. And you're realizing that person that's on the show as a guest, they're really opening up. Because that's the purpose of those shows. And they're not cutting anything out of it. No. So PR people, I can imagine they're not happy about this because it used to be a lot easier coming into this space, but now it's a lot different than ever before. So when you talk about talent, it has to do with all these appearances. One publicist who works on movie rollouts says that some of these appearances are completely mid. Now, many of the new media circuits, most of its influential stops took root during the event 2010s with Call Her Daddy, with Hot Ones, with Good Mythical Morning, among others. But now you realize, and these PR people are realizing too, you have to go to these shows because of the attention these shows get. Now, the shift in the press circuit can be largely traced back to late night shows, when the style of Johnny Carson and David Letterman's often substantive, sometimes contentious conversations towards viral stunts, when you had James Corden doing carpool karaoke, or Jimmy Fallon doing The Tonight Show, and he'll do things with the guests. The new media circuit is basically the same thing as late night now, and talent can pull off entire publicity campaigns without ever sitting for a difficult conversation. The value of doing interviews with journalistic rigor will always exist, but now you can just do one of those and really round it out with much friendlier stuff. So when they talk about the Wicked Press Tour, where Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were all over the place promoting that movie last year, they went on podcasts like Las Culturistas, or YouTube shows like Oui Oui Baguette. But the most viral moment emerged from a traditional junket interview when they had their sincere, slightly baffled reaction to an Out.com reporter commenting about people holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity because it became an irresistible meme. One literary agent who cited the New York Times, Books, Review, Fresh Air, and national TV spots says there used to be kingmakers. None of those things really work as a pillar of a campaign anymore. Now you need everything to hit at the same time from multiple different directions, and even if it doesn't always work, it's totally maddening. Right, you don't have that end-all, be-all place where you promote. But that's also the default of the traditional media. Because look at the people that were replaced. I mean, the days of going on Carson or Letterman or Arsenio or Jay Leno, that's all changed. Because now you get to these folks where Jimmy Kimmel, and how they set things up for that, or Jimmy Fallon or Stephen Colbert, like the way they were kind of set up for their shows, they lost their audiences. Whatever audiences that David Letterman had, that Jay Leno had, Jimmy Kimmel kind of had a start for himself because he found himself in a place, but that also dwindled. As network TV has continued to go down with ratings, none of those shows really get enough ratings to do anything much of all. That's where we are now. There's not any place where you get the mass media audience. You still get listeners, you still get viewers if you're going on anything on YouTube or on other outlets, but still it's not guaranteed. And you're not promised that whatever thing you're going to promote, people are going to go watch or see or consume, whatever it is. But now you do get a lot more metrics from some of these new media outlets where you get to learn about followers, viewers, streams, engagement rates, but no one seems to agree on what counts as impact anymore. So they talk about what will Timothée Chalamet do when he goes for another Oscar run, because he'll have a movie, Marty Supreme, that's going to be coming out. Is he going to go back to Theo Von, Nardewar, Brittany Browski, College Game Day? Will they land with the same effectiveness? So it's all a miracle for some people, they say, when they try to put this together. Chalamet's team can't be in the business of chasing past miracles. Their job is to create the next one. But I think what the PR people are missing in this story is that Timothée Chalamet, by all these interviews, it wasn't so much about promoting the movie itself, but it was showing a side of him that made him relatable. So that no matter what Timothée Chalamet is in now, let me put it to you like this. By seeing him on Theo Von, by seeing him on College Game Day, by seeing him on 60 Minutes, and all these other places, but mostly the podcasts, by seeing him on those podcasts, and by seeing him just on these other places I never expected to see him on, I'm now interested to see his movies. I'm actually now like, if I see a movie coming out and he's going to be in it, it's like a Leo DiCaprio movie. I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to probably go find out what's going on here. Because what happens is that when you see stars that are just not so caught up in the Hollywood spotlight, and they're a little more grounded, we can see them a little more of who they are, their authenticity, their originality, and we can relate to them. Because that's the part I got the most out of him, was like, we relate. Okay, sports guy, video guy, music guy, awesome. You could have a beer with him. You could talk some shit with him. Have a good old time. I get it now. I get him to a point, and now I want to go see his movies. And I've already seen, listen, I saw Wonka, I saw both Dunes, I saw Complete Unknown, and you know what? He's winning me over. Good actor. And he's learned how to go and make himself, his public persona out there is good. And, you know, he's working out pretty well. Can't complain about it. The guy's got, whoever's working with him right now is doing a good job. But it has to work with the right stars that can handle being made in this new generation of new media to be on traditional and both, and find a way to go and make themselves, you know, very important so they get out there and be noticed. And this is a story I would love to go and continue to go forward and learn more about, because there's a whole lot to go and take from this that would be very fascinating to go and learn about. There's a few of the stories I want to take now from the radio industry that I thought were very interesting. First of all, Boston Globe saying something that I've been saying for a long time. NPR should pay its own way. So Jeff Jacoby, columnist of the Boston Globe, says the justification for subsidizing public broadcasting evaporated long ago. So NPR has been biased. Let's just be fair. They fall short of fair, accurate, unbiased, and nonpartisan news coverage. And NPR loyalists and insiders have acknowledged the problem. A 25-year NPR veteran, Uri Berliner, as a former senior editor, said that the organization shifted from reflecting a liberal bent to relentlessly promoting a rigidly progressive worldview on everything from race to climate to the Middle East, especially pronounced. They go in here to say that an independent press should not have to deal with a government underwritten media that should be anathema. And when I'm talking about the fact that we have such a large deficit when it comes to the national debt, that there's no justification for continuing to funnel public funds to NPR when public radio attracts a fortune in private funding from the donations made by innumerable listeners like you to the $101 million it reaped in corporate sponsorships last year. The latest balance sheet for NPR showed it had roughly $818 million in assets against $263 million in liabilities. They're making money without the need of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I've said it for years. And that's all I got to say about it, is that it's not so much about what they're going to do with their content, but it shouldn't be subsidized. And again, it's only roughly, $1 billion, $1.1 billion every 2 years that NPR and PBS are getting from it, but they're making money on sponsorships, and they're making money off of contributions. So they don't need anything else. And also, if NPR wants to go and just unload their frequencies and just focus on podcasting, they will benefit the same. I really do think that. One other story I'm going to bring up here quickly about the SEC. There have been several members right now several commissioners are going to be leaving the SEC. So deregulation and any kind of moves that are going to be done with the delete initiative are going to be delayed. So all the stuff with the ownership rules are going to have to hold off for a little bit. Fortune magazine spoke with Jennifer Witz, the CEO of SiriusXM. So when they talk about the podcast division for SiriusXM, that it's still a small part of the company's business, but we already talked about the fact that SiriusXM has been willing to go and spend some real money on podcasters. 8 of the 10 top 20 podcasts in the U.S. are from SiriusXM stable. We've talked about Alex Cooper and the deal that she got right now, up to $125 million for her deal with SiriusXM. For the most part, SiriusXM has always had older listeners that are always driven by new car sales. That's where they usually get a lot of their audience that are streaming or listening to their stations on SiriusXM through dashboards, infotainment dashboards from cars. But the prices have gone up a lot over the years. $24.98 a month for an all-access plan with lower and higher tiers available. It's a lot. Now, one of the things they're trying to do is they're not focusing so much on their podcast division or streaming as much as they are trying to get subscribers back up. So 2019, they had up to 35 million subscribers, but growth has stalled since then. And last year, the company doubled down on its core automotive subscriber segment. So those that have that in the cars, they want to get them to go ahead and get back to listening to it again and subscribe to it. So SiriusXM is going to start launching an ad-supported tier that's going to be priced into high single digits monthly to try to get more people back into listening in the car. So we heard about all this before. The Fortune magazine story gives a whole history of SiriusXM from the start to current day, but the idea still comes down to the fact that they want to try to go and get subscribers back to listening to it again. And they're baking on a lot of podcasts to go and do some of that as well to get more across. But I don't know what they're going to do in their current format. You know, the music format's going to be what they are. Howard, is he going to stick around for another contract coming up? He's 71 years old. Like, how much longer can he go? Does he want to go? And if they're spending money like they are, over $100 million on Alex Cooper and other projects that are out there and other podcast networks that are coming in, will there be room or money for Howard Stern to go and be a part of this as well? We don't know. The media industry so far in 2025, according to Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, that job cuts have led to 4,107 job cuts so far this year. That's about 50% less than what was last year, but still there's a lot of things going on where we had a lot of mergers last year. And we're going to get mergers coming up right now with Paramount and Skydance that will also create some real issues. Disney's going to be laying people off if they already hadn't started already. There's a lot going on. It's just not a good thing. Not a good time. A story from The Guardian coming out that Facebook and Instagram are going to be allowing AI ad creation by the end of next year. So this will be to aim directly to target brands' marketing budgets, posing a threat to advertising and media agencies that handle client campaigns and budgets. So, you know, there was a part where the Facebook types came in and went after news sources with their AI to start taking journalists' jobs away. And, you know, that's why the major publications out there, all these big hubs, these companies, decided to go after the likes of Facebook and Meta and Instagram, but they couldn't do much of that. So since they already got a good dent on the journalists out there and journalism itself, now they're going to go after advertising. Make it easier so these ad agencies are not going to make so much money. That AI will make the ads for them. Keep an eye on that. That's going to be coming soon. Don't forget, remember, catch my interview with Carell, the radio veteran, here on Broadcasters Podcast. That's coming up tomorrow. And until then, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.